You're listening to Forge Theater Labs.
Where does that idea come from?
A podcast devoted to exploring theater history.
Is anything that original?
Concepts and storytelling.
Isn't that just an assumption?
And the creation of theater from behind the scenes.
How do they even do that?
This is Forge Theater Labs.
History, innovation, perspective.
Hi, I'm Josh Yu.
I'm Maya Williams.
And you're listening to Forge Theater Labs. We have another interview this evening with Jasmine Joshua, they, them, artistic director of Reboot Theatre Company. And I am so excited to welcome them to the episode. We are going to be sort of talking through their experience with developing Reboot Theatre Company, as well as learning a little bit about this new musical that they're developing. Jasmine Joshua is the founder and artistic director of Reboot Theatre Company, a queer and trans-focused company in Seattle. Jasmine graduated magna cum laude from UC Santa Cruz with a degree in creative writing. They studied with the Larry Moss Studio and the Groundlings. Directing credits: Book It, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and Intiman, The Mystery of Irma Vep, Reboot Theater, Private Lives, Cabaret, Cafe Nordo, Down the Rabbit Hole, Christmas Killing at Corky Cliffs, Annex, Gold, Assistant Director at Fifth Avenue Theater for Bliss, Associate Director at Village Theater for XY and Sherwood, On Stage, Fifth Avenue Theater, Village, Seattle Shakes, Seattle Public Theater, Book It, Intiman, Reboot, and Seattle Musical Theater. Jasmine is also a musical theater writer and composer, and So That Happened, Fifth Avenue, Breadcrumbs, ACT, and Ars Nova. Their musical Here and There will premiere at 12th Avenue Arts in June 2025. Before moving to Seattle, Jasmine was a theatrical publicist in the Bay Area, managing clients from Lord Theaters and Broadway tours to opera, ballet, and a monster truck rally. You can learn more about them on their website, www.jasminejoshua.com, and you can find those in the notes. Welcome, Jasmine, again.
Yay, I'm so happy that thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So jumping right in, obviously I heard about Reboot Theatre Company many years ago now. You all have been around the block for a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the mission of Reboot Theatre Company and sort of walk us through how it came about.
Yeah, we're actually just celebrating our 10-year anniversary, which is wild to think about. It also happens to be the same age as my twins, because being pregnant with twins wasn't enough. I also started a theater company that year. Our mission is to test new interpretations of established works through non-traditional casting, design, and methods yet to be discovered. And generally what that means is that we queer the canon. We take musicals and we basically make them gay. I mean, that is the queer and trans and gay agenda, and we proudly service it. But I mean, beyond that too, it's also just like, when you start to look at non-traditional ways of looking at classic works, you open it up to all sorts of people who have not been traditionally allowed or seen in these roles or been able to tell these kinds of stories. And it came about that sounds super altruistic, and it is, but it started, I will admittedly, kind of selfishly. I actually started the company before I came out as non-binary. But I call this one of my breadcrumbs, which is oh, I should have known. I should have known then. But I'm a character actor, and I'm a young character actor, which in musical theater, when you are not a man, means that you have to wait until you are the fat, funny mom. And when you're in your 20s, there's no roles for you, right? And it's entirely determined on how old the lead man is to see if it would be determined that what is your relationship to him. And I was like, God, I just want to be able to play parts that I want to play and not necessarily worry about, how people perceive me. And I have loved the musical 1776 since the 6th grade when I saw the movie for the first time. And I always wanted to play John Adams. So I thought, so I got pregnant. I knew I was having twins, and I was like, well, I mean, look, no one's going to cast me for a little while. I didn't know what that was going to mean for me. So I was like, I might as well just do it. And it started literally me thinking what if I just did an all-female at the time production of 17, or not even production. What if we just did an all-female reading in my living room of 1776? And at the time, there was no productions in the United States that I could find that had ever done that. There were concert versions, but no one had ever done a full production of it. And I was like, well, let's just do it in my living room. I'll get a friend to play piano and we'll have a good time. And the more people I talked to about it, they were like, oh my God, but like, are we going to do it for real? Like, should we have an audience? I was like, sure, let's do an audience. We'll do a concert version. Other people have done it before. And then I kept talking to people and they're like, wait, no, like if you do this, I'll build you the set for free. Oh, if you do this, I'll do costumes just for cost. Oh, if you do this, do you need a theater? And people just started giving me things. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do all that, I might as well do the whole show. Like, and as far as I know, we are the first company in the United States to do a full production with no men. Several of us have come out as non-binary since then. Who would have thought that if you give people the opportunity to play a man in tights and heels, that would crack a couple eggs. But yeah, so we did it. It only ran for one weekend. That was all the rights that I could afford. And truly, still to this day, people will come up to me and say, after the first 10 minutes, it didn't even occur to me that none of you were men. And I thought, okay, so you're telling me, as far as we know, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, all of these men who were actual people, and we all know they were people, like these are not characters, these were real life human beings. And as far as we know, they were all cis white men, straight. And we didn't have a single one of those play any of those people. And you still bought it. You still understood the story. You still connected. You still sat through it and you were not confused. And this was in 2014. The show went, I should say, I started this idea in 2014. 1776 premiered in June of 2015. So this is actually, it is at the time of this recording, exactly 10 years ago. So Hamilton did not exist yet. You're welcome, Lynn. But the point being was like, you were clearly not looking at a man playing Benjamin Franklin and you still buy it. You still laughed, you still connected, you still understood the story. And so my thought was, well, what else could I do? I mean, if you're willing to suspend your disbelief and go along on this ride, that means I can do anything. And then I decided to keep going with the company. And 10 years later and 13 productions later, and many awards and many accolades and hundreds of artists who, know that Reboot is a safe place to come and be who you are and become who you want to be. A lot of people who especially musical theater, there are so many roles that are type is a big deal in theater in general, but especially in musical theater, right? And so people who are, trans and gender nonconforming, type is a problem for us because that type is defined by society that has erased us and doesn't believe that we say who we, when we say who we are, right? And so I've created, one of my things that I'm most proud of is that, me and all these other incredible, my incredible board and all the other artists, we've created a space for you to be like, I don't know, try it out. Let's test it. You want to play a quote man in this show? How does that feel to you? How does it change the story when someone else plays that role?
Thank you so, so much. And congratulations on 10 years, 13
Yeah.
shows, many accolades. Absolutely. We want the best things for you. We want it to keep going. And you got to answer this a little bit, but I really want you to expand on it a little bit more. Was your vision clear from the start? And how did it evolve? And also you do make it pretty clear that you wanted basically people of marginalized genders to play roles often given to cis straight white men, cis straight men. But how did your mission for Reboot Theatre Company evolve?
Yeah, I will say that it has only really gotten stronger and set in deeper roots. I mean, I came up with that mission statement again before I was out. I came out 3 years after I founded Reboot. And once I knew that that was really the reason why, I think that we were able to become more, I don't want to say adventurous, because I think that even at the beginning, what we were doing was still no one else was really doing that at the time. Certainly not in Seattle, although I don't know where else. But I think that what I realized I just became, I mean, as what happens when you come out and you become more aware of yourself and all of the things that were always there, but you just weren't conscious of. And I think that the mission statement just became sharper. And I, as an artistic director, when I was talking with directors and when we were picking shows, and when I was like, okay, what is your reboot? What are you saying? And I think that has gotten sharper as we have grown, because I'm like, okay, we just did a production of Damn Yankees where we set it with we set it in the 40s instead of the 30s, and we made it basically like a league of their own. So it was an all women's team, but we kept, if you know the show, the main plot line is that there's an old guy and he's like, an old man. He's like, man, I wish that I could play on my favorite baseball team. And then he makes a deal with the devil and he turns him into a young man who is able to then play on his favorite team. And then he wins the pennant and we all say hooray. Well, we kept old Joe as a man and he turned into a young woman. And we didn't necessarily want to make it, I mean, look, everything could be a trans allegory if you think about it hard enough, but like, we didn't want to even go there, but we just kind of wanted to make it of like, what would it like for this old man who ignores his wife for the whole show? Like he is like, there's so many sexist undertones. What does it do to this character to understand what it's like to be a female athlete in the 40s? And then we put a lot of we never change a word because we legally can't. We don't change any of the lyrics. We don't change any of the pronouns. We keep everything exactly as it is written. But when an audience sees this person realizing like, wow, women in sports are treated like they're not as good. How does that change him at the end of the show? How does that make Joe's journey different than just watching it in the regular way? And we did that last September. It was a smash hit. It was so successful. I'm really proud of that reboot. And it, again, like, I don't know, like it kind of became gay because there's this very famous song. It's one of the best songs in the show called The Game, where it's all the baseball players singing about all their sexual exploits. But now it's a bunch of women singing about it. And again, we didn't change anything. We just changed the context,
So when you say kind of became gay, it did become gay.
Yeah.
Not kind of.
Like fully gay. I mean, we can't help ourselves.
I think that's such a fascinating thing where it's like the context is important, right? I want to sort of dig deeper into the how much at least I would say hypothetical thought goes into those consequences, right? Like I always think in terms of casting, I'm always conscious of my casting because I am concerned about sort of the impacts that we see with switching casting or putting someone in a role that may sort of open them up to criticism or like that. And so what is that process like a little bit of okay, so we're gonna switch genders on the show. We're gonna sort of make the show a little bit more gay. Like what does that discussion look like or sound like for you and the team?
It's my favorite. It's my favorite part. I love this part of producing with Reboot, and I love this part of being an artistic director at this company. So I always say to every director who comes in to work at Reboot, I said, do not once we've picked the show and I'm like, and what is your reboot? What is your twist? What is the thing that you want to examine through your vision? And that the more that I understand that, the more that I can help them. And one of the best ways that I can help them is through casting, because I understand the lens of the reboot vibe. That sounded like nothing. Whatever, you know what I mean? Like I understand what I'm doing. Like it's one of those things that's like, I don't know how to explain to you what a reboot is, but I just know it when I see it. And so even if the director comes in and is like, well, I mean, the director hasn't worked there for 10 years. I have, right? But the director has an idea. And I'm like, let me help you sharpen what you're trying to say. Let me help you push the right buttons that help make what you're saying pop for an audience who is, so that if they don't read the director's notes, they still know what's going on, right? So when I walk into a casting room, I always say to a director, do not have a preconceived notion of who you think is going to be right for a role, unless that is part of the vision. Like if the vision is like, we want to do this show, but so-and-so, I really want to be played by a woman, or whatever, that's one thing. But all those other characters who makes up the world of your show, let them come to you. because you're going to see it in the room. When you free your mind of the type that you're looking for, you're going to find something better. Trust me. And it happens every single time. Every time it happens. People are like, oh, I think that this should be that should be this. I'm like, oh man, free your mind, man. Like I am telling you, you're going to find something better. You're going to find something better and it's going to make it. So off the bat, that's what I think of. When you're talking about like conscious casting, there are two routes. And I think that both are valid. I understand the pitfalls of both of them, and some people can argue with me, and that's fine. But I think that you can both. I don't think that gender or colorblind casting is necessarily bad. It can be if, for example, you have an all-white cast of like main characters, but you put all the BIPOC people in the ensemble, but it doesn't matter because we're blind. It's like, all right. Like, yes, there is you know what I mean? Like that, it can become a convenient way for people to not do their homework. However, I would say like my favorite example, we did a production of Sweeney Todd. The reboot was that we put it in modern times, and it was a commentary on how like the masses just kind of accepted the fact that they were eating people. And it was kind of okay with them. And like, how much can we put, like how, like the zombification of, you know, like fads and trends. And that was like one way to look at Sweeney Todd. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. Let's look into that. And of course, you know, because we are Reboot, non-traditional casting was always on the table. So now we're like, okay, non-traditional casting. What are we saying? What do we want to do? We had some people come in and I'm like, if part of your reboot doesn't necessarily have to do with the casting, which this one didn't, like I said, keep an open mind. Let's just see who comes in and see what fits what. We had, I said, however, like we can do blind casting, but here is the rule. If you cast the judge as a man of color, we cannot cast a little white girl as Joanna. And the reason is because the judge sings this pedophilic, lusty, disgusting song about how he has raised Joanna and she is a minor and he wants her sexually. And even if the rest of the cast is colorblind, the audience is still going to see a man of color singing that about a little white girl. And by girl, I mean the character is a girl. We don't cast women.
Yeah, and also if he's the only Black person in the play, that's
Correct.
Also a problem. Yeah.
Correct. So again, we can be blind, but that doesn't mean that we still have to be what we have to be conscious of is what the audience is going to perceive. So as it turns out, that is not how it shook down. Although people of color ended up being in both of those parts. But like our Sweeney was a trans masked person. We had a woman playing Anthony. A Black woman played Joanna. And again, you know, there are all these lines about her yellow hair. She ended up getting like, she ended up like changing her hair and putting some blonde in it. And I was like, but I said to her, I'm like, I don't care. Nobody's going to be like, what? I don't get it. Like nobody's going to care about that. Like this woman sang, like, God, Greenfinch and Lindenberg was so beautiful. So like, no, when people hear that, no one's going to be like, well, it doesn't make sense.
That is my favorite musical of all time, just so you know. So Sweeney Todd is like hands down like my favorite, and I love seeing different versions of it. I feel like it needs a remount. Like I can't not envision the way you've described it. We'll be right back. Speaking of musicals, I want to talk a little bit more about your musical in a few minutes. You've been listening to Forge Theater Labs. I'm Josh Shu.
I'm Maya Williams.
And I'm Jasmine Joshua.
And we'll be right back. Hey there, Josh Shu here. If you've been enjoying our episodes and the stories we bring to life, there are a couple of easy ways that you can help us keep the fire burning. First, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. And if you want to take your support to the next level, you can buy us a coffee or even join our Patreon, helping us create more bold, design-forward, and innovative theater experiences. You'll find all the links on our website at forgetheaterlabs.com. Your support, whether it's a subscription, a donation, or just sharing the show with friends, makes a huge difference. Thanks for helping us forge ahead. At Forge Theater Labs, we want this podcast to be as collaborative as it was when we created it. That's where you come in. Have an idea for a future episode, a guest you'd love to hear from, or just thoughts on how we can make the show even better? Feel free to email us at info@forgetheaterlabs.com. Your voice shapes the stories we tell, so don't be shy. Let us know what you think.
Welcome back to Forge Theater Labs. I'm Maya Williams.
I'm Josh Shu.
And I'm Jasmine Joshua.
Jasmine, we were just talking about musicals and sort of your deep love for them. I know that you worked on a musical recently, here and there. Can you tell us a little bit about that musical, and we'll sort of deep dive into sort of what inspired you to write that?
Yeah, it's just, my life's work. So I started writing it 7 years ago. The idea came to me, it was about actually 6 months after I came out as non-binary, and a local company on the Fifth Avenue Theater put out this call for new musical pitches. And I was like, I got a pitch. And I knew that I wanted to write about, so when I came out, I was 33 years old, and I was the oldest non-binary person that I knew. My children were 3 years old. I was in a presumably cis-het marriage, although since then both of us were like, we were each other's beards. But at the time I was like, I'm locked in. Like, I'm not going to leave my family. I can't do that. Like, I felt too old. I was like, it's too late for me. Even if I find this out about myself, there's nothing that I can do about it. I am locked in. I've made my bed and I'm gonna lie in it. Damn it! Like, so I really like accepted that, and I had a really tortured couple of months where I really wrestled with that. And once I started to like get through that a little bit more and realize like I cannot go back. Like, I know too much. Once you understand something like that about yourself, you cannot go back in. And I wanted to write about what the experience was like coming out later in life, because there aren't really any narratives about that. A lot. I mean, the only one that I could think of, and this is aging me, was In and Out. If anyone remembers that, which is like this guy comes out as gay and he's an adult. And of course it's this like wacky comedy. I haven't seen it in years. So if it's like terrible and cancel worthy, I apologize. But point being, that was all we had. That was it. And certainly like non-binary wasn't even a word that I had heard of until I was 33. And I went to UC Santa Cruz, like it wasn't right. It wasn't even gender studies. It was still women's studies. And I knew trans men and I knew trans women, but I had never heard of non-binary. I didn't know that was a thing that you could do. And so I wanted to write about what that would be like. And so that was where the seed for this musical came from. And then I basically, as I submitted it, they were like, and who's your composer? And I literally called my best friend since we were 14, Heather Ragusa. And I was like, hey, I'm putting your name down as the composer for this musical I'm submitting. And she was like, what? Okay. But I was in a band with her and she wrote these I'm like her biggest fan. Her songs are incredible. We were in this bluegrass folk band when we lived in LA. And she's just this incredible songwriter. And all of her songs are stories. And I'm like, that's what musical theater is. They're songs that tell a story. They're not just, they're not, I want to hold your hand, which is I love the Beatles, but like the difference between that and a song that like takes you from where you started to the end of the song, like that's what makes musical theater really good. And Heather just naturally knew how to do that. So I was like, great, you'll be my composer. And I don't even know how, kismet, whatever. They did a nationwide search. They had 88 different applicants. They narrowed it down to 10. We were within those 10. They flew Heather up. I was in Seattle and we did their story summit where we had a whole week and they were like, you have a week to write a 10-minute presentation about what your show's going to be. Heather wrote 5 songs. We presented all 5 and like did a little like description of like what this could be. And then they chose us to develop the show over the course of a year. I think they narrowed it down to 5. And so through the year we wrote it and then we presented it at a workshop in New York in the fall of 2019. And then we all know what happened in 2020.
Well, I can't even imagine what happened.
Oh man,
I don't even remember.
I was there and I still can't imagine that it happened. But yeah, it was just, so we had to take this little pause. But I mean, basically, once theater started ramping up again, because I mean, obviously for a while we weren't even sure if theater was going to exist, which was like deeply troubling. Um, and we started, we did another draft and we started submitting it, and we got into the Goodspeed Johnny Mercer Foundation Writers Retreat, which is this incredible retreat. They're the best, hands down, period. They're out of Connecticut, and they're amazing. And that retreat really made the draft that we're currently doing the world premiere of. But in between that, like Seattle Rep gave us a workshop. We had the Rhinebeck Writers Retreat, which is also another famous writers retreat coming out of New York. And we've had some like really good time to do these drafts. And we became semifinalists for the Richard Rogers Award. We were finalists for the Richard Rogers Award. That's hard to say fast. Semifinalists for the O'Neill Musical Theater Conference, and a finalist for the Jonathan Larson Grant. So we've been, and we also got pretty far down the road in NAMPT, the National Alliance for Musical Theater Conference as well, which is super exciting. We didn't make it all the way to the end, but that's okay. Like, frankly, one thing that I've learned in producing this alone, and the reason why is because producing musical theater is really hard, because it takes a lot of money, and a lot of musical theater houses really rely on outside producers, what they call enhancement money. And I do not have that. And we are not names. This is our first musical. So it's been really an honor to get all of these awards and accolades kind of just by being ourselves and not through any sort of networking, because we have none. That was a really long answer to a question that wasn't that. Sorry.
No, it was a fantastic answer. Thank you for sharing it. I'm really curious about both your writing process and Heather's writing process when it comes to the composing. What surprised you both about the process? What came as a surprise as far as like what was originally set to be in the musical, and then what wasn't, or what wasn't originally there in the beginning but is there now? And are there any and also, because this has been such a long process of like 7 years, has new terminology come up for you both when it comes to non-binary identity? Does that matter when it comes to the 7 years that have passed as you're processing your life story?
Yeah. There's a song in the show. Heather wrote most of the songs. I wrote, I think, like 3 of them. And one of the songs that I did write is a song called Non-Binary Rhapsody, which is, of course, a spin on Bohemian Rhapsody, because it's just like this long, crazy song, which is the song where Sam, who is our main character, decides to finally search on the internet, how do you know if you're non-binary? And then the internet explodes onto the stage. And when you go down that rabbit hole, for those of you who have, like, you come up with, you find all sorts of different words that you've never heard of before. Non-binary, like, I settled on that because it seemed the simplest, but like, you get to like bi and trigender, two-spirit, agender, polygender. There's so many different, there's like, there's infinite, because we're creating a language that, again, has been burned and lost in history, right? And so the community is making it as we live, which is sad that we have to, but so cool that we get to, and that we're, that people are here to be able to do that. So I have a whole song about it, and then of course, the joke at the end of the song is Sam, who has never heard of any of these things, goes, was that supposed to make this less complicated? And the internet responds, oh no, just more fun. Right. Haha, I'm so clever. But yeah, so laughing at my own joke. But yeah, the process between like me and Heather, a lot of that has been like, I think because we know each other so well, because we have known each other since we were in high school, we're fortunate in that we work really well together, in the sense that like sometimes I write a scene and I'm writing a scene and it's coming to a point where I think it's a song, and the song has to say this. Write a song that says this. And then Heather says, okay, great. And what do you need it to say? I think the most perfect example, because it's one of my favorite songs in the show, as I said, I need a moment where Sam and the other character, Vicky Vector, who is an older lesbian, who is Sam's secret aunt that they go on this journey to find. And they're trying to figure out like what they have in common. And so I said to Heather, I'm like, I need a song where the two of them are bonding. And I think it should be a song. And like, maybe it's about figuring out when they both knew they were different. And the name of the song is called When I Knew. And it is brilliant. Like just out the gate, Heather like walked into the other room, wrote the song, came back. I mean, this woman is a genius. I just think she's a genius. So, but then there would be other times where like Heather is like, okay, I'm going to write the opening number, or I'm going to write the song that we know needs to happen here. She'll write the song, and then I'll realize that in the song, she has said things that I have in the book later. And I'm like, great. So you've said it in the song. I need to take it out of the book because it's double information. So then I need to go back and like readjust to fit around like this, this piece that she's written. And that back and forth, I mean, over the last 7 years, I mean, my God, I can't, we have at least 4 more musicals worth of songs that we wrote and cut. And scenes that we wrote and cut that didn't make it into the final version. But that's pretty much the game that we've played the whole time.
I think that's so interesting because, like obviously when you're writing a musical, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make it in.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by, your experience going through so many different workshops, right? How do the different workshop environments influence your process? And like, is there a point where like, for example, like, oh no, it's too much feedback. Like, what do we do? Like, which way do we go? Because obviously different workshop environments will produce different feedback. So
sure. So, the most successful, well, I shouldn't say that. There are different workshops and retreats for different things that you're doing, right? So like the retreats, like the Goodspeed retreat, it was just for writers to hammer out a draft. And every night we would do these salons where all the other writers in the retreat, we'd all come together and like have snacks and drinks and then show each other what we had done that day. And it was just in our own little womb. It was super safe. It was so great. And there was no pressure to do anything. And frankly, if everything that we wrote that week never made it into the show, it kind of didn't matter. It was just a safe place for us to like generate content and like work together. And it was remarkable. Now, that was helpful for that moment in our development because we had already done a we had already done a reading with actors and with the music at Seattle Rep. So we had a bunch of notes that like, as we were watching it, we were like, oh, that scene's too long. Or actually, you know what? That song should be moved to such and such. So we had all that information from having seen it. Cause that is, I mean, it cannot be understated how valuable it is to have other people read, and especially in a musical, sing, because then you get the sense of the timing. Because we had demos, so like we could read it and then play the demo, but it's not the same. You really get a feel for like, we are sitting in the scene for a long time. Or like, you know what, actually we could get deeper into that scene. Or actually, the point is this and blah, 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 blah. And you don't really get that information until you have other people read it to you. And so that is like, when you think of a workshop, like that is invaluable. You need that. But then afterward, like you said, you get all this feedback and then people tell you things. Half of it you throw away. It's hard to because it's personal and sometimes you're like, I want to make everyone happy. And you have to let go of that. But you get all that information. And then to go into a retreat where it's like the Rhinebeck retreat, there was nobody. I mean, literally they put Heather and I up in this house on a lake. And we're like, well, the grocery store's down the road. Good night. And we did all these rewrites, and it was great to just be left alone with our own mania.
I'm really glad you let go of the idea of like, oh, I need to try to make everybody happy. And I have a follow-up question to that. In the process of letting that go, who is this everybody? Who are the people pressuring you into like, oh, I need to make sure you're happy, even though it's your life story and therefore only you can tell it?
Indeed. Well, unfortunately, some of those people are the people who pay for the workshops that you do. So you have to listen to them. And again, nobody is ill-intentioned. I think the biggest issue that I had, and this show is based off of my experience, but I kind of intentionally did not lift entirely from my own life. Because I didn't want it to be that personal, because especially again, to remind myself that I started writing this only 6 months out of the closet. That is so new and so scared, and I was so like, I'm not enough, and I don't deserve to be writing this story because I'm not trans enough yet. Which, incidentally, if any of you are listening, thinking I'm not trans enough is the most trans thing you can ever think. So like already. Like, don't worry about it. The fact that you said that, you're fine. You are plenty. You are enough, and you are real. But I was going through a lot of that. So in the beginning, when people were like, I don't get it, I'm like, oh my God, it's because I'm inauthentic. And it's the fact is, you don't get it because you're cis. You don't get it because you don't know these stories. You don't get it because you're not in the community. And so, yes, like certainly as a writer, it is part of my job to explain the story to the audience. And sometimes you don't have to get it. Sometimes you just need to empathize with the people, and that's okay. And again, like connecting back to my work with Reboot, we all know Ben Franklin was a dude, but let me tell you, you saw a woman do it and you still understood, didn't you? So maybe you'll understand this too if you just allow for that experience.
If I had to watch 1776 to know more about the Declaration of Independence that I didn't know beforehand, you could sit for a minute and be,
You know what I'm saying?
and be like, oh, that's what non-binary means. Okay.
For real.
I think it's so interesting because, like, you know, like there is something about that switch that helps words land, right? Right. That sense of, I hate to sort of bring it back to like theater school, but like Brechtian alienation, right?
Sure,
That idea
sure.
of like pushing someone out of their comfort zone to explore an idea lets the words resonate in a different way than, you know, it would be if we were just getting up and speaking for ourselves, right? In that sort of typical way. And I think, you know, for me, it's like George Washington will always be that recording in my mind now that
Sure.
Lin-Manuel Miranda has put it out. Like it's
That's
in
right.
my consciousness. I can't divorce Burr's voice from, right?
Yeah.
Hamilton
From Leslie
in
Odom.
that
Yeah, 100%.
context. Yeah, exactly. I, you know, in terms of sort of finding that distance, finding that separation, did you have other people who were perhaps a little bit more, were longer in the community that sort of offered advice along the way, sort of provided feedback? You know, did you reach out to community members to sort of flesh out the conversation that was being had?
I am sorry to say that not many members of our community are in high levels of theater new works development. So there weren't very many. What I ended up doing was having a lot of living room readings where I just invited trans and gender nonconforming and queer people that I knew to be like, does this speak to you? But there were very few. Neen Williams Teramachi, who used to be the New Works director at the Fifth Avenue before they dismantled the entirety of the New Works department, was very encouraging to us. But they only have so much power, especially as, again, post 2020, unfortunately, a lot of New Works departments kind of went by the wayside. And I think that they kind of knew that they were like, I mean, I like it, but I can't make it make money to people who need that to be the case.
No, but it's such a testament of you prioritizing people with communal lived experience rather than prioritizing people in academia or like trying to prioritize like people of more privileged narratives though. And as you were speaking earlier about how the fact that a lot of where you are now is through word of mouth and being able to receive accolades through the hard work and not through high-end connections speaks volumes to what a successful show you're making. So I wouldn't want to
Thank you.
like because yes, do we want to see more more trans and non-binary people in the high positions we're trying to look for? Sure, but at the same time, like your work is proof that there doesn't have to be a reliance on that. Your community is who you rely on.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. I mean, truly, you know, what I've been saying in the curtain speech every night is like, we made this show because we were tired of asking permission to make the show. And so we did it. And it's really hard. It's really hard to self-produce. But I'm really proud. And this cast and the people who, again, over the last 10 years of working with Reboot, like I'm really honored to have developed a community of people who, know what I stand for and believe in my art and want to make it with me. And they came together to make this beautiful, beautiful show. So it's humbling for sure.
On that note, I think this is a great time for us to take a break. We'll be right back. You've been listening to Forge Theatre Labs. Hey there, Josh Shu again. Want to get your brand in front of a passionate, creative, and engaged audience? Forge Theatre Labs is looking for partners to sponsor this podcast and join us in bringing bold, innovative theater to life. If you'd like to place an ad right here, reach out to us at marketing@forgetheaterlabs.com. It's a simple, powerful way to support the arts while sharing your message with listeners who care about creativity and community. Again, that's marketing@forgetheaterlabs.com. Let's build something extraordinary together.
Welcome back to Forge Theatre Labs. I'm Maya Williams.
I'm Josh Shu.
And I'm Jasmine Joshua.
So Jasmine, we were just talking about sort of, right, how you landed on Here and There. And something that really sort of resonated with me was the way you said, I want to do the work that I want to make, that I want to see. And that's such a powerful statement, right? Is that something that is reflected in Reboot as well? Like it's like your answer to the why now test?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny because at Reboot, we have very few detractors. We're mostly, I'm happy to say, generally beloved where we are, which is great. And it's a testament to the incredible group of artists that I work with. But sometimes people are like, oh man, like, is that really especially as non-traditional casting becomes something that everyone is trying to do, which is great. And I'm not mad at that. But now it's like, well, then what's the reboot? Like, you're just non-traditional casting. And, when I say that to marginalized actors, they're like, what do you mean just? Like, why is that just? Like, what else do you want us to do? I'm just excited to be able to be Harold Hill. Like, I have to do, what else do you want from me? So I think that being able to make space for underrepresented artists in all aspects of theater to be able to practice their craft, hone their craft, enjoy their craft in a space that is safe, in a space that is for them, it should be why not instead of why now? Like, why not? Of course, right? So that is a core of what we do at Reboot for sure. And it's certainly one of the reasons why I decided, I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to produce Here and There. I'm just going to produce it and I'm just going to put it out there. And even if it's small and if this is the only time we ever see it, I'll know that other people got to enjoy it.
That's so awesome. You're so
Thank
awesome.
you.
What makes you, yeah, absolutely. You're so welcome. Absolutely. You're so welcome. What makes you and your team decide on a show to do if in a way that answers the why now tests and the why not test? And I'm also curious about what makes you pass on a show, whether it be due to timing or other matters.
I'm trying to think if there's ever a show that I've been like, ooh, it's not a good time for that. No one has pitched me anything that I felt like we couldn't make relevant. So far, hold my beer, I guess you could say, but I truly actually, here's a great example. We did 110 in the Shade. If you just read that book, it is terrible. Like, the script to that show is so sexist and so old music, like golden age, like ugly woman thinks she's ugly, is told she's ugly until a man says she's beautiful, and then she is. That is the plot to this musical. Why? God, why?
The plot to every 90s, early 2000s
right?
rom-com.
It's true. Yeah, so Scott Charles Anderson loves that show, loves the music, and was like, how do I reboot 110 The Shade. What should I do? And one of the ways that he wanted to reboot it was he wanted to turn it into more of a bluegrass country sound and like take kind of like the soaringness out of the score and make it a little more like country. And already I was like, I'm already in. For one, that is great. I love that. Because as mentioned, like I sang in a bluegrass band. I love folk moment. I'm all about it. So already I was like, okay, that's cool. And again, that's why we say methods yet to be discovered. Like that's another way to like, oh, I've never encountered this show like that before. How exciting. So I'm reading this script and I'm like, oh God, like how do we make this palatable to people in, when did we do it? Like 2023 maybe? I mean, like recently. How are modern audiences going to listen to a man be like, well, you're just ugly, Lizzie, or whatever the hell the line is, and be like, that's cool. Nobody wants that. Who roots for this person? Nobody. And then I had a moment where I was like, if Lizzie is a trans woman, and this is a woman who keeps saying, I don't feel like a woman, which she says in the play, I feel like I'm an ugly woman, and no man will ever want me. That changes that whole play. That changes the entirety of that arc. And then when you have Starbuck who comes in, who we cast as another trans person, see her and say, you are beautiful and you belong wherever you want to be. That changes that play. We did not change a single word. Two casting, two different, I mean, we had all sorts of trans people in that show, but like those two roles cast like that changed the whole show. Changed the whole show. And now people are weeping. And now when she's like, I'm beautiful, we're like, yes, yes, you are, you know? And the fact of the matter is, and then once you know that I'm like, that's the reboot. Paris Manzanares played Lizzie. She was stunning. She was stunning in that. She was so good. And again, like I said, you just got to be open. She had just moved to Seattle. No one had ever heard of her before. She just showed up. She showed up because I had a room for her. I don't know if she would have, I don't know, you know what I mean? If she had showed up to another theater company, I don't know. Who's to say? But I was like, you're the star of the show. Scott, I might tip the scale a little bit, but like, I truly let the directors cast their own show because it's their vision. I'm just there to like support and like give ideas. But Scott fell in love with her immediately. Who couldn't? She was incredible in that. And then it became, okay, how are we going to, so if that's the story, how do we make this more and more clear? And once you read through that script, there are so many contextual clues because like her brothers, they're actually not mean to her, but they keep saying to the father, like, don't put it in her head that she's ever going to get married. No one's going to marry her. I love her. Let's keep her home where she's safe. And you're like, think of the added layer of that. Like, first of all, like how progressive are these like brothers in the 40s who are like, I want to protect my sister because we accept who she is, but we know that the world doesn't, and we don't want her out there. Oh my God. It was brilliant. If I do say so myself. Scott did a brilliant job with that show. It was directed perfectly. It was cast perfectly. The design was incredible. From that show, that soggy, dusty ass show.
I read an article recently about, the sort of demand for and the return to this idea of queer joy in storytelling. Not to say that trauma isn't necessarily an important part of that experience and how important it is to tell those stories, but sort of to advocate for that. And the thing that I was reading when I was reading that article was I was like, well, Jasmine's been doing this for like 10 years. So that's every time you describe a show that you do, every time I hear about a show that you do, that is at the heart of that experience for audience. And does that translate into your own writing too?
Absolutely. One of our, the first rule of Fight Club was no trauma porn. When we were writing here and there, we were like, we do not want to make this into trauma porn because I do not want people to relate to my queer characters because they feel bad for them. I want them to relate to these queer characters because they're human beings and so are you. And I also happen to be a comedy kind of guy. I like to laugh. I'm like, it's a comedy. It's going to be a musical comedy. That does not mean that there aren't hardships. That doesn't mean you're not going to cry. People are crying all through my show. But it is not because this person is like suicidal. It is not because they hurt themselves or are afraid others are going to hurt them. That does not have a place in a non-binary musical comedy. I don't want it. And there have been like, I mean, we have gotten comments in the past from various people who are like, I just don't understand what the stakes are. And I'm like, yeah, because you don't empathize with what it is like. And I am not going to add violence so that you can empathize.
Yes,
that is your problem.
absolutely.
That is not mine.
I love that. Speaking of here and there, where do you sort of imagine the sort of next steps are this fall into 2026? Where do you imagine here and there headed?
Well, it looks like June, we're having pretty much a sold out run of it, which is really exciting. I've invited a lot of industry people, and I really, really hope that now that I have proof of concept, that we'll be like, see, people will come and see it. People can relate to it. It is okay. And so I'm hoping that, someone picks it up. And someone gives us a shot to do a larger production with a bigger budget that I don't have to use a GoFundMe to to pay for. And also another thing that I'm hoping, if we start to make more money to cover our costs, is I'm hoping to do a cast album, because we're hoping to have a wider reach so we can send out the music. Because the music, again, I cannot speak the higher praises of Heather Ragusa's music enough. But we want to get that out there so that people start to hear it and go viral, as the kids say. So hopefully by this fall, those kinds of things will be in the works. I will say Reboot in September, we are doing Anything Goes. Speaking of just wanting to keep it light, because we are just in hell in this country right now for queer people. Because Trump sucks. I'm assuming you're allowed to say that.
Sure.
You can cut it if you want. We'll just say and we all know why, because Trump is a Nazi. So,
I heard there was an episode where Maya and I went in time to stop Trump from being president, and used Aristophanes as help. And so I don't know. This is a weird episode, but we were there.
Sounds great. I'm all about it. And, from your lips to God's ears. In any case, because he sucks and we hate him, we at Reboot to talk about another what we want to do. We're doing Anything Goes. We are putting it in space, and we are basically just making it a multiverse of space fandoms. So the cruise ship is the Enterprise. We have Star Wars references, Babylon 5 references. We have Firefly. We have, there was one that I hadn't heard of, Red Dwarf. I hadn't heard of that, but oh yeah. So we have all sorts of references. We're going to have droids. We're basically going to get some Roombas that we're going to put a trash can on top of and just have them go back and forth. It is going to be, we have aliens. We have the diva from The Fifth Element. It is going to be such a raucous time, and I cannot wait. So that's our fall.
Might I make a suggestion for a name of a character?
Please.
Which is, we named our Roomba Arthur D2. So I just think it's...
Oh, I love that. That's so cute.
Jasmine, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. We would be thrilled to have you back in one capacity or another anytime. On the podcast. And so thank you so much. I'm Josh Hsu.
I'm Maya Williams.
And you've been listening to Forge Theatre Labs. Have a great night, everyone.
Forge Theatre Labs is produced by Josh Hsu, audio production by Sam Rappaport, intro drum beat by Dave Register, incidental music by Super Order, and closing music by Corey Melanson.